Hi there, this is Chris Ryan. I'm the founder of Day 180, and I've got a guest today. My guest is Andy Barrett from my local friend, and my part of my origin story is introducing Andy as my sidekick today in this work that I've done, and really I mentioned this, Andy, and I'll let you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Sure. Hey, I'm Andy Barrett. I'm currently Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching here in Chris's local school district, and am excited that pretty soon I'll have the opportunity come this summer to be the superintendent. So, Chris and I have had a lot of conversations, and some of what is Chris's origin story has really helped us kind of start to make better decisions about how we're using tools. And so I'm glad to be here and share some of our experiences today.
Great, thank you. This just to give everyone kind of a point of reference. Uh, my background, I've been in ed tech for around 20 years. My work started at a large, at Discovery Education, and we had a streaming product. I spent years kind of refining and pouring over data in a sales roles, not just with a long stay at Discovery Education, but with other ed tech companies, an LMS provider. I worked for an adaptive assessment company. I've worked with an analytics company that brought analytics and does analytics, brings those to school districts. But my experience in pouring over education data and district data and school data to sell products into those locations is really where my expertise has really lies. And early in my career, I discovered something that was really important, and I ended up. It's been about 10 years since you and I have talked about this, Andy. Initially, I
Yeah,
think when
yeah.
I moved into the district, this on my district here, Geneva was one of the districts that I would try and sell to.
Mhm.
It becomes a little awkward going to the same person if I'm switching companies every time. But the reality was I got a chance to watch how and learn how administrators have a very delicate balance of understanding technology and new technology that people like me were bringing to the table. And then the administrator's ability to synthesize that and say, this is going to help us in this classroom. And then continue to innovate with a pipeline of innovation as well as remove products. And really, that was my game was making sure my product was sticky enough to where it wasn't pushed out. So when I talk about the Day 180 process, it's truly a method that I kind of worked on with Andy. The original idea was that I have felt and always felt that if administrators had kept a better track of licensing that they had in a district, that some would probably not continue to renew my product for one reason or another. One being that may not be used, or my pricing had reached a certain point, and maybe the value proposition wasn't there any longer. But many districts, due to a variety of reasons, teacher turnover, administrator turnover, new technology development, all of those reasons are something that I had kind of brought this idea to Andy and said, hey, if we did this in our district here in our own backyard, how could we, identify some gains or help you be more effective? And I say more effective, I mean at large. Can we do better with technology and continue to refine? But when I presented it to you, Andy, I think that's where our conversation started. I think it's been 10 years since we probably talked about it, but maybe we actually applied the process kind of in a shorter time frame. I don't think you have 10 years of data at this point,
Yeah,
but
no, I don't think we do. But yeah, we definitely started. It's hard to believe, but yeah,
I
it's
know.
it's been that long, I think. It's been
Yeah.
that long.
Yeah, and I think that's where, to me, the work that I'm doing with this process and bringing the idea to other districts is really where I'm capturing the core of the baseline of the idea, which is help a district organize their first cut at their licensed products. What do they use? And then help them host conversations around where they go from there. Are they using these products well? Do they get the use? Can they identify it? Can they through work in the district, go and find and understand how products are being used, or technically, can they find use reports and gather that, and then drive some decisions? And hopefully, we're in an interesting time of year. And Andy, we've talked about this, but you're in right before budgeting season for the next year. There are a lot of purchases that happen through COVID, and there's a lot of decisions that are flying around for districts. And this is a benefit kind of at this point in the year, I would imagine, to make decisions on products and whether you're keeping them. I should probably allow you to comment on this. I'm probably steamrolling some really important pieces here, but from a budgeting timing standpoint, are you at that point of year where you're kind of hosting those discussions?
Yeah, I mean, we have groups where we have these discussions. I would say, I think that, the word you used that I think is right on here is process. This is a process that it's iterative and it's ongoing, and we're constantly circling back and reflecting. I think, when you reference, back the start of our conversations, we kind of had this idea of, well, could this be a program, or, something that kind of does this work for you in an automated fashion? And the reality is, I think we came to that, no, it can't be that. You can't have one more product that helps you manage products. It has to be having an understanding and kind of a process for how you're reflecting on all the tools that you have, and all the tools that folks are using in your district. And I think another thing to think from the beginning that is a real reality when you're talking about all these ed tech tools and folks in positions like yours, the reality is, a lot of that, frankly, marketing and stuff is going around folks in chairs like mine, and right to teachers, right to principals, right to the building level. And so when you think about getting started, I think the first real challenge is just that information is everywhere. Who's using what, how are they paying for it? How much are they using it? Information about that is kind of all over the place, and not necessarily centralized, if you haven't been really devoted to it. And I think that's kind of one of those first key steps, is figuring out how to get that information that's all over the place into kind of a centralized location.
Yeah, and I know that's not easy, because I played on the other side to kind of set it up in some ways, because that's
Right.
what we, in some places that we did, and teachers would get, we gave them access at a certain school building level, or trials, or whatever the case is, to get that first kind of glimpse, and then they'd bring it back, and then we get a pile of users, and then they kind of influence a purchase. I think something did happen over this last stretch of, we'll say, 10 year. I can't believe I'm talking in 10 year increments, but I am. In the last 10 years, there's, at this point, there's around, I read an article last summer that said there's about 9,000 ed tech products in the market. And that is these are core ed tech products licensed, and it was referenced by in Ed Week. And as I was thinking about it, that's been a huge, right? That's a huge number of products. At the same time, through that same 10 years, on the sales side and on the marketing and the company side, we were armed with something in a 10-year period, from marketing tech, MarTech products, from like the hundreds of products to 6,000 products.
Right.
So you, as an administrator, you aren't crazy when you feel like you are inundated by products, because we were automating messages and forcing this messages out, like through products that look like automated emails, and it looks like I'm talking to you, but realistically it's just walking through a sequence of marketing messages. And it's a dynamic that really, if there was one way to cut through this, it's to do a process and put this in a way that you are revisiting, and it refocuses. And the whole point of us naming this as Day 180 is, you as an administrator only have 180 instructional days in the year.
Yeah.
So every conversation, whether it's a new product that's coming in, one that you need to exit, or send out the door, or where does it sit? Where does it sit in our day? Who uses it? And I think that's that's a really important takeaway, because I do talk to administrators, and I've walked into offices yours at some point, and the phone's ringing, and it's like, it's a guy like me on the other end that's been going around all day.
That's right.
So I kind of feel bad. I'm kind of doing penance. If there was anything for the next 10, 15, 20 years I want to do is help fix this, because I think it's a I think it's a worthy undertaking, and I think what you've done by applying this is, I know there's kind of three big takeaways I want you to kind of hit, and hit on one, which is that information is all over the place. But I know you did, we did kind of get it started, and if there is a way that you know you can impress on others to get that, at least that starting point. One thing I'm curious, as you had think about this, and internally as you think about this, and you think about your team as they were ready for that, and the conversations that it sparked. I'm curious, can you comment on any of those discussions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think first, again, that getting that information all together, or at least trying to get a good handle on it. A good thing about that is we can do a lot of that kind of on the admin side and with our office professionals. It does take some doing because, as you said, um, you know, everybody's trying to get you to sign up for 3 years and sign up for 3 years at a different time. And oh, you're about to expire. So let's just add a year now. And you're, trying to manage POs and, work through all this stuff and catch as catch can. If you don't have kind of one centralized place that you've created to say, here's the product, here's the level it's for, here's the content area it's for, the stuff in the kind of day 180 kind of template thing. If you don't, that information is there for the taking, but you need to spend some time to get it. And so I think that's really that first crucial step. And, for us, I can say it was our office and the office professional here working with our tech office and the OP up there. In some cases, maybe having to work with our buildings, but really just kind of building that kind of building out from that template of here's what the products are, the levels therefore,
Yep.
the content area, the how long our contract is for, when the company expects us to renew it, that kind of stuff. And then once you have that, you can start to go back and ask some of the next questions about the usage and how much are we really using this thing? Are any of these similar? That kind of stuff. And that's where you can start to bring your team in. The next thing that we really did once we kind of had some of that baseline was we started to build the capacity of some of our teams. And, whether it's getting committees together at the elementary level, we have an elementary tech committee, which is a representative from each building, and they come. And once we have that information, that's information we can share with that group and start having some of those, like you said, difficult conversations. And we might have two products that we recognize, oh, well, actually, these both kind of do the same thing. But at one point, we decided we wanted this one. And at another point, a different one had a flashy red light, and Chris was very convincing. So I,
It's
we
There's
went
some
with
guy out there
yours.
trying to do that. Exactly
Right.
that. That's the hard thing. That's what makes it so tough is putting you in a spot where you're talking with your team about that. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the in any district, it's not just here, and I think it's important to acknowledge the amount of work that goes in. You're essentially, a school district is, you're managing people. You're 80%
Of
of your
course.
budget is people.
Of course.
And when I say people, I mean all of your teachers, all of your administrators, principals, and the students. You're there to serve a student and instruction. And I
Correct.
think if the vendors are complicating that or making it slower or making your day more difficult, that's
Mhm.
that's where I think recording and remembering and keeping some artifact or some record of that is where I think is a distinct advantage. And it is something that I know, even we've talked about it. Our recent conversation around just the idea of having multiple years of data is like next level in this
Correct.
conversation. And,
Correct.
and I'm curious about that because we had talked about this, and it didn't occur to me until we really sat and talked about it. But historically, renewal rates for ed tech products has been kind of consistent, but this year I think it's going to be different. And I think some of those renewals are probably already hitting desks like yours and offices. So I'm curious from a longitudinal standpoint, that's kind of the other another wrinkle in this is looking at, I'm curious on your feedback on that. What have
Yeah.
you discovered over the years?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, it's that classic analogy of, how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time, and you just got to start. And so having that, at least having the information there in front of you, that first step, like we talked about, then starting to build that capacity in your team, and building the trust and the safe space that we can have these conversations, I think is that next big part. And then you just got to start eating that elephant, and we're building that kind of institutional knowledge, in our district, where we're starting to talk about, the value of these products versus the amount of time we have and all that kind of stuff. And when I talk about that elephant one day at a time, we might recognize as a district, for example, we might recognize a scenario where, I'll be candid, we might have two products that are similar-ish. Um, and in going through this process and in working together and having conversations, we might acknowledge and say, well, we're not ready to dump one of these yet, because we can't, because we have too many stakeholders who've devoted time to building resources in one, or to, providing some of their instruction using X tool or Y tool. So sometimes it might be appropriate to keep a tool, but we are in the position where we're able to have the conversation about that,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that's the real key.
Well, putting you in the driver's seat with that situation. I think the one thing that you just said that I think is really important is that institutional knowledge. Where that shows up from the vendor side is, I used to know that I could call an admin, it might be someone outside of your office that's
Yep.
sitting there, and I say, hey, you guys should have gotten your renewal by this time. It's there. Do you see it? Yeah, it's over here on the desk. And next thing I am asking her to go and, hey, figure out who's going to go and sign that thing. Go help me. Let's walk it through the process. What's that look like
Uh-huh.
for you? Because
Uh-huh.
we're going to get the renewal. The awareness standpoint is when that your team member gets that call, and it may be at the building level too, is just so they understand that this is a thing that's going to happen. Let's not break our our system up here because we have other things to do today. Let's make sure we're doing the right things. Like, let's
Correct.
just channel that or filter it to a different place, or let's put it on the stack and we'll cover it with that meeting with Andy, at the end of the month or whatever.
Right. I think that institutional knowledge part is key. I think, we've been fortunate in our district that a lot of the stakeholders have been here a while, so we've been able to build this together. What I think is potentially intriguing about, Day 180 and maybe what it can do is, in a way, you can almost kind of, as a district, outsource some of that institutional knowledge, right? Where if roles are changing, say, the office professionals or people in some of your administrative roles are changing, what you have with Day 180 and the Day 180 process theoretically is, you've helped us build this system that the institutional knowledge is there. And if a new person comes in or transitions, you don't have to reinvent all of that because, well, Andy had it all in his head, but now Andy's doing something different. So you kind of got to start over, right?
And you know what, that's by being able to track that among those groups. And I think I've mentioned that the big three in a district that I would always work with are the CFO, the CNI director, and the superintendent. And
Yeah.
among those three, you may have an admin team and some support office team members that are supporting those, but those three are the big three. And then you have your principals in the buildings. Everybody's,
Sure.
they're all critical, but the reality is that's a big difference. So
Yeah.
it really is something that we're focusing on and kind of helping those that process along.
I will say, one more thing in that longitudinal process that I think is helpful is, one of the things you definitely helped me to start to think about, and we've been able to start to do better is, gathering that kind of usage data. And, it's out there, and some organizations are very free with giving that to you, and some are not, but pretty much everybody has it. And if you can get that, that has helped us leverage some powerful conversations where we've been able to sit with then some of those representative teacher groups, or, the BLT at a school or something like that, and say, like, look, I know there's a fear, because that's one of the things we have, and feel like we're taking something away, and this is a resource my colleagues need, so I don't want to take that resource away from my colleagues. But you can sit down and look at some of that usage data and say, oh, well, look, here's the number of people who are actually using it. Here's how much they're actually using it.
Yeah.
Do we think as a team now that this is providing enough of a value that we should keep it? And we've been able to have some really powerful conversations, I think, armed with that kind of knowledge and that capacity to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think if I recall, we had a conversation a while back, and I make this available to others as well, but a short script for your admin team to call out to vendors and like what to ask for their use reports. There's actually
Yeah.
3 templates that I can offer as a part of this. One is the template for that call. The other is like a breakup letter or a non-renewal letter. And the last is like a template to give your office staff at the building level. Because those are 3 things that as a salesperson may have changed the trajectory of what I was kind of preying on and kind of making
Yeah.
happen, or that were a disadvantage, put you at a disadvantage by not
Yes.
having information,
Right. Exactly.
and that process. So
Exactly.
and I know it's been put to work here. I've seen it. So
Yeah.
so that's been great. Um, the last kind of piece is, I guess, around the way technology is used. We're in a weird time, right? There's new technology coming. You're already being asked at some level, what's AI like, or
Oh,
let's
yeah.
look at new technology, and why aren't we doing the latest chat GPT AI, whatever
Right.
it's going to
Right.
be. So we can't stop that innovative channel, but I'm interested in your feedback, kind of how have you fostered that environment of
Yeah, I
innovation?
mean, I think the thing in our district, we try really hard to go back to, what's our vision? What is it that we're trying to accomplish for kids? How are we trying to, um, prepare them to matriculate through our system, and, get beyond our walls and go be contributing awesome members of society, right? And so we do, I think, when we have these conversations or any of the other conversations that we have, try to focus it around that. And I do think that this conversation is helped by that. I also think that when we're doing that, we can also start to ask, some other questions in terms of, is this tool, mission critical, right? I think that's one of the big questions. And again, you've got to have that data with you up front. If you don't have a baseline to start from, you're not even knowing what to ask those questions about. But there might be some tools that aren't used by a lot of people, but the people for whom they are used, it's a very important and significant tool. So then we got to keep that, right? There might be some tools that um, you know are used by everybody, but a limited amount of time. But that's what we expect based on our vision and mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And we want everybody to use this tool 3 times a year. And then that's appropriate, right? But we have to have that kind of baseline knowledge to know what is mission critical and what is not mission critical. And then you also have to think about that from, I think, in terms of what is our what is our kind of vision for using these tools. And I think one of the things that we've tried hard to do, and it's going to be a constant battle, but one of the things we've talked about in our district is a kind of less is more philosophy, and recognizing that if you're trying to have teachers learn a jillion different tools and have kids learn a jillion different tools, not only is it probably costing us a lot of money, but it's also not, nobody's getting really good at any of them. So when you have that kind of less is more kind of vision or mission from a technology tool perspective, then we can start to ask questions about, is this really helping our kids get to that next spot? Do we already have a tool in place that everybody already knows how to use that helps accomplish this task, et cetera, right? So, but again, you've got to have all those kind of baseline structures in place to be able to do some of that.
Yeah, and I think it's great, because I want my kids to have the experience where they're doing more, making the best use of their time,
Right.
and having everyone already in the district on that page is what what accomplishes that, and,
Yeah.
that's an exciting, to me, that's exciting.
Yeah. And it's a
and-
long
and-
road.
Yeah, I know, and it's not going to stop. I don't see this.
No.
I think you and I are going to continue having these conversations, and
Correct.
I love talking with the bringing new stuff to you, and not new products necessarily, but new ideas and ways, because we get to see a lot of different practice in the field, and I know
Yeah.
how hard this position, this role. I know you're our incoming kind of superintendent here, but the role doesn't get easier
No.
as this technology evolves. In fact,
Right.
it's almost more demanding, because you're expected to put a student product out that's ready for a work world that's using modern technology,
Yeah,
modern tools.
for sure.
And
For sure.
to me, that's what I'm excited to kind of help you get to that point.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome, Andy. I think we covered kind of a lot of content. I needed this. It's really important. It's hard for me to capture and bring you into these calls with other administrators I talk with, or speak to. But I know I want to thank you for making time, and I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, well, I thank you for putting up with me for this 10 years now and helping us kind of start to initiate some of these conversations that I know we would not have been able to as a district, without consultation and collaboration with you. So thank you for that, and I'm sure I'll keep bugging you.
Yeah, cool. Oh, I appreciate it, and it's an open door. You're stuck with me too, Andy.
Yeah. Okay.
With me
Good. Good.
too. I'm not leaving.
Good.
But thank you. I appreciate it, Andy, and I'm looking forward to a great rest of the year here.
Yeah. You too, Chris. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you. We'll see you.